Hello folks, so away they go. The vaccine is ready. Is it? Says I. Yesterday I put up a short video just giving you the basics of what they've been saying in relation to this vaccine. The talking heads at Westminster Childcare. And one thing that they were pretty adamant on is that they have to persuade the public that it's a good idea to take this vaccine, while censoring all negatives against that agenda. So straight away, they're letting you know there's serious flaws with all this, because if you are confident that what product you're trying to thrust on the people by force, through blackmailing them because you're holding all the money and you're stopping them from working, then you would not be concerned about any contrary information. You'd be very happy to engage with it and clear it up. Clearly that's not the agenda they're pushing garbage everywhere to persuade you while removing anything contrary. That in itself is the first huge red flag in relation to this vaccine. Now, the Manchester Evening News come up with 8 reasons, calling them myths as in relation to vaccine information. So the first one is the speed with which the vaccine was created means it's not clear it's safe. And they say, fact. It is true that most vaccines usually take several years to be developed. Yeah, 10 to 15. Several years isn't 10 to 15 years. Okay, so it's not a fact, it's an obfuscation there. It says, however, as Deputy Chief Medical Officer Jonathan Van Tam explained, this is usually because they are produced by companies which make an investment decision about whether to move on at each stage. He's blaming the fact that it's produced by companies and it's to do with money as to why it takes so long, alright? That's garbage. Let us now look at the history of vaccines, okay? This is an educational resource by the College of Physicians of Philadelphia. So this is scientific data, medical data, that's accepted and has been used by physicians forever. Okay? And this is what they have to say. Vaccine development, testing and regulation. Vaccine development is a long, complex process, often lasting 10 to 15 years and involving a combination of public and private involvement. So we can rebuff Van Tam there, who says, as a fact, that it takes this long because it's produced by companies who make an investment decision. Right, so he's tying it specifically to money. Right, that's garbage, as we've just seen by the real physicians, real medical people, and the College of Physicians. They're very clear. Vaccine development is a long, complex process, often lasting 10 to 15 years. What Van Tam and the Manchester Evening News are trying to claim as a fact is complete garbage. Unless you want to believe the pseudoscience as opposed to the College of Physicians of Philadelphia. Guys and women who have been doing this for a very long time. Okay, so this is where you're going with this. The stages of vaccine development and testing. So this is the exploratory stage. Now that lasts between 2 to 4 years. That's the exploratory stage. Okay, and it's funded by academic and governmental scientists to identify natural and synthetic antigens that might help prevent or treat disease. Then there's the preclinical stage, and that's where they're studying tissue culture and cell culture systems and animal testing to assess the safety and of the candidate vaccine and its immunogenicity. okay, or ability to provoke immune response. So the preclinical stage is where they're testing it on animals. Okay, and that's a 1 to 2 year. So straight away we've got 2 to 4, then 1 to 2. And we've only at the preclinical stage here. Right? Then there's the IND application. A sponsor, usually a private company, submits an application for an investigational new drug. So then that's the application. Then it moves into phase 1 vaccine trials. Two to 4 years, 1 to 2. So we're looking at 6 years there. That's 6 years and we haven't even got to the phase 1 vaccine trials in the process of developing a vaccine. So the first vaccine trials is where they will assess the vaccine by testing a small group of adults, usually between 20 and 80 subjects, okay? The goal of phase 1 is to assess the safety of the candidate vaccine to determine the type and extent of immune response that the vaccine provokes. That's phase 1 vaccine trials. So we're 6 years in, then they're hitting phase 1 vaccine trials. Now it doesn't actually give a time frame to that, but obviously if you're going to test something into 80 humans, you're going to be at least a year to make sure that there's no short-term, mid-term or long-term negative reactions to phase 1 vaccine trials. Now phase 2 is a larger group of several hundred individual participants in the testing. And some of the individuals may belong to a group at risk of acquiring the disease. So it's getting a bit more specific in that. These trials are randomised and well controlled and include a placebo group. So this is phase 2. And the goals of phase 2 is to study the candidate vaccine safety, immunogenicity, proposed doses, schedule of immunisations and method of delivery. So in phase 2 they want to know how many doses, when, how often and how it's best delivered, which is obviously going to then decide what's in the vaccine as well. So you've got aluminium, or aluminium as we call it, which is an adjutant, etc. So that's down to phase 2 vaccine trials. So you're looking there, you get into 10 years. And you're still at phase 2. Phase 3 is a successful phase 2 candidate vaccine. So you've reached a conclusion that one particular vaccine is suitable. That then enters phase 3 vaccine trials. And this is where they involve tens of thousands of people. Okay, tens of thousands. So it's still in a test. Remember this. Now they're saying that they have got enough for 400,000 people because it's a 2-shot vaccine. Right? So this, I would suggest, is actually what they're doing here, but not saying it because they've released it safe. They're actually about to enter into phase 3 vaccine trials according to accepted and real medical scientific data and formats. Okay, so what they're not telling you is that what they're doing now, next week in UK, is starting phase 3 vaccine trial, and they're trialling it on the over 80s, their carers and the health workers. Okay, are you happy with that? Because I certainly wouldn't be. So there you can see, Van Tam is saying it's a fact that the reason why it takes so long to make vaccines is nothing to do with anything other than money. We've now just shown, or the physicians of Philadelphia have just shown you that what Jonathan Van Tam, the Chief Medical Officer of the UK, is a liar. That's Jonathan Van Tam. I did a video on Jonathan Van Tam earlier in the year. If you want to get an insight into who this man is and his connections to to the current leader of the World Health Organization. This guy is the chief medical officer in the UK, claiming falsehoods to be fact. Okay? Remember, we're 10 months in to this vaccine. 10 months. Yeah? Physicians in Philadelphia are telling you contrary to everything Van Tam is telling you. And of course, as I've said before, this science that this bunch of rogues are pushing was formed, financed and blackmailed through the Epstein network, coming out of MIT, Harvard. Okay, MIT now is pushing itself as the global university. There are certain quarters putting it up as the top university, putting Oxford, Cambridge at about 4th. So there is a clear move to raise MIT above everything. Well, this is what MIT have produced. The fake pseudoscience upon which Jonathan Van Tam is claiming to be fact, and the accepted medical science and data is false. You know, where are you going to put your trust there, people? Okay, where are you going to put your trust? Now, the second point that they're trying to myth bust is, didn't the regulators cut corners to test the vaccine quickly? Well, yes, they have. So, they reply, fact, no. Part of the reason the MHRA was able to test the vaccine faster than usual is because clinical trials overlapped rather than happening one by one at the end of the process. How can you overlap when you are testing a substance to see the results? You can't start phase 2 until you've got the results of phase 1. Is that not so? And bearing in mind, before we get to the actual testing, you've got the exploratory stage. That's 2 to 4 years. Where's that? There's no involvement. Then there's the exploratory stage after. Sorry, the preclinical stage. And that again is 1 to 2 years. So you're talking 6 years there. That's just exploratory stage to preclinical stage. You're looking at about 5 or 6 years there. Then you've IND application. You know, the investigational new drug to be sanctioned as moving forward to phase 1 vaccine trials. 20 to 80 people. Second phase vaccine trials, which comes on the back of everything you've gained on the phase 1 vaccine trials. You cannot overlap vaccine. You can't do that. You're not getting. You cannot start vaccine phase 2 until you've got the results of phase 1, and you can't start phase 3 until you've got the results of phase 2. So is this idea that they've managed to do it in 10 months is because trials were all happening is garbage. It's fantasy. It's pseudo-scientific data. It's mathematically incorrect. So this is, again, evidence. It's pseudoscience that's pushing this absolute nonsense. And they add on to that, the work enabled more than 1,000 pages of data to be examined in tandem with the progress of scientists, meaning the work could be completed far more quickly. The safety checks, however, were still the same. How? You cannot do the safety checks if you're doing phase 2 trial before you've got the data for phase 1 and then again on to phase 3. That is not fact. It's a lie. Yeah, the Manchester Evening News are printing this as fact. They're liable. And Van Tam is also liable for doing the same. 3. The Oxford vaccine contains parts of aborted fetus. Fact. So as soon as we see that word fact on this page, we know it's a lie. You know, that's where we need to be looking at that. So it says, a Facebook user falsely claimed the vaccine user MRC5 cell lines, which are originally developed from research deriving lung tissue of a 14-week-old aborted Caucasian male fetus. It says AstraZeneca has confirmed its vaccine was not developed using MRC5 cell lines, but does use a different cell strain taken from a female fetus aborted in the 1970s. The cells are used to propagate the virus for the vaccine, but the cells do not make it into the final jab. They're not being very clear, really, there in that sense. So, again, they're just besmirching everything. The fourth point they bring is the government is bringing in a law that means unlicensed, untested vaccines can be given to people and no one is liable if they go wrong. That's a fact. Well, let's see what they say as a fact. This is incorrect. The government held a consultation on whether it should change the rules around unlicensed vaccines. Unlicensed is not the same as untested. They don't get a license until they're fully tested. So it does mean if it's unlicensed, it's not tested. Why would it not get a license? You can only get a license when it's tested, when all the phases are complete. 10 to 15 years worth of work, of data. Because when you're doing this kind of stuff, what you're testing for is adverse reactions. And not everybody, when you study the children's vaccination programs, there are 3 distinct side effect chronology. You've got your immediate and short-term reactions, which a lot of children have. So that can cause autism, epilepsy, all these issues that are now labelled and pulled into this mental health industry. You've got midterm effects. So your child might get to 7, then all of a sudden a condition occurs. And because it's quite a distance away from the initial vaccinations, it's very rare that there's a connection. And then, of course, you've got your long-term reactions, which is when you may reach 18 to 20 and you may develop multiple sclerosis and other debilitating conditions such as MS. These are your long-term effects of the vaccination programs, and usually brought on because of the chemistry in the processed food, activating with the latent residues from the childhood vaccines that are then awoken in you, and such as MS and other serious conditions like that are classed as long-term effects of the vaccines. Now, this is old data, this is old medical science, and I became very aware of this during the 2009-10 bird flu pandemic. That's where I gained most of my information and knowledge about the medical system. So I don't claim to be a doctor or a medical expert, but I have studied such a vast array of what they actually do medically to people. I do actually know quite a lot. So I know what I'm seeing when I'm seeing something that's incorrect. So again, I would say that Manchester Evening News claiming as a fact is in fact not quite correct, and it's the wizardry comes in. It's unlicensed is not the same as untested. They have to be fully tested to get a license. If they're unlicensed, why are they not licensed? You see? So again, bit of wizardry, word wizardry there. It usually works. Hopefully now we've put it in that way, you can see through that joke. 5. Vaccines alter your DNA. Fact, the vaccines do not alter your DNA. They comprise mRNA that gives the body instructions on how to make proteins on the surface of the virus. Your DNA and RNA instructs everything to do everything, so it's altering your DNA. If you're putting some programming in there, some coding that's going to affect the way your DNA works, you are altering the DNA. Again, a lie, wizardry, yeah, because they know you're not going to think it in these terms. Now, also bear in mind, this vaccination is a 2-shot vax, and it's the only vaccination that we've ever heard of that needs to be stored at -70. There is something in this vaccine that is not in any other vaccine, because other vaccines are stored between 2 to 6 degrees or 8 degrees Celsius. Why then is this one having to be stored at minus 70? It's a huge difference. Come on, are you seeing that? So there's something in this vaccine that is not in any other vaccine. And that's a fact evidenced in the minus 70 storage temperature. 6. Dr. Elsa Granato, one of the first participants in the vaccine trial, has died. Fact, Dr. Granato is one of the first participants in the trials of AstraZeneca, an Oxford University vaccine, and has not died. I don't know. I didn't follow that up. I do remember seeing it. 7. Bill Gates is using the vaccine to secretly microchip the world. Well, now, get this, because they're not stating a fact here. This is where it gets a little bit, yeah? It says Bill Gates is using... Fact, Mr. Gates is regularly the subject of conspiracy theories due to his charity works in vaccine development. That is a fact. He is regularly the subject of conspiracy theories. Are they theories, or are people putting out data that suggests that's exactly what he's doing? That what he's telling you face to face is not what he's actually aiming to do. That is a conspiracy. That's what it is. However, get this. This is the wizardry. There is no evidence that the Microsoft founder or anyone else is trying to implant microchips in anyone through vaccines. Mr. Gates has also repeatedly denied those claims. So, no evidence. Well, everything that they've showed thus far in the previous 6 attempts at undermining data that moves against these vaccines, we've just seen is a lie. It's false information. And there is no evidence. Well, there actually is. Minus 70 degrees. That hasn't been explained. Because that'll be the evidence, if you get down to it. What could need to be at minus 70 to prevent it functioning? Electronics. Circuitry. Yeah? Processors. They would have to be took down to that level to prevent them operating. As soon as they go inside a warm body, they'll become operational. Now, that is a theory. I will accept that. I've looked at the data, and there's a lot of data to suggest that something of that nature is being put into humans through this vaccine. So we'll leave that slightly open. Minus 70 degrees, people, that is the open wound in relation to this vaccine. And the 8th, the COVID vaccine is another repetition of the thalidomide scandal. Well, we don't know. And if anybody is going to say it's not, they don't know. It says thalidomide is a drug that was marketed and treated for morning sickness in pregnant women in the late 1950s. Such an innocent thing to stop. And in the 60s, it caused birth defects. Yeah, so that's the 5th. That's 10 years before we knew what that one are doing. So if they're going to start comparing by claiming that they've got that data, can you see that this MEN report, this is Tavistock. This has been created by word wizards, yeah, to blag your map, so that you see through your map the territory in the way they want you to see it, which is take it, have it, be happy, we'll open the country again. Why are you so happy to go along with this nonsense? Because if you just break down the words that they're actually using, you can see the wizardry, you can see the deception, you can see the Kabbalah, the inversion of this. This is priesthood language. This is sophistry. Okay? Now, I'm not making great claims about what this vaccine is going to do because we don't know. There haven't been the trials. We've had 10 months with this vaccine. And what did the physicians say? You know, let's go back to this again. The College of Physicians of Philadelphia. I'm not arguing with these people. This is the day-to-day. Okay? You don't see, they're not tied to mass murder. They're not tied to hiding 2 million deaths under vaccinations in hospitals. These guys here, the physicians of Philadelphia, are not that baggage isn't travelling around with these guys. These are guys that have been doing this for over 100 years. And they're saying very clear, vaccine development is a long, complex process, often lasting 10 to 15 years. So they've minimised that to 10. Yeah, 10 years as a minimum. And the current system for developing and testing and regulating vaccines was developed early 1900s. Yeah, and it's become a standard. But all of a sudden now, Epstein's done his work, the pseudoscience is out, it's being pushed by your government. All of a sudden, what was developed early 20th century, regulations, etc., which forced them to take 10 to 15 years to develop a vaccine, have been undermined, undone, and are now being claimed as false. See it. MIT, Jeffrey Epstein, yeah, Zionism, the Zionist lobby, Israel, the place where the no-hide system is centred, and they want all your estates. Are they going to be so overt? Are they so confident they have the masses entranced in fear that they are prepared in this first outing of 400,000 doses, hitting the over 80s in the care homes, and then all the workers and carers around those people? Are they going to be overt and just kill them? I'm not so sure. But if they're convinced that the masses are so entranced in fear, they could well do that. However, I would suggest there's possibly something else going on. Is this first batch going to be neutral, a placebo? Because if I was trying to entrance the public to take up a vaccine that's not in the best interest and it comes out of nowhere, so it's an intrusion into your normal day-to-day life out of nowhere, that everybody all of a sudden has these things injected into them, then if I was to set off with the first vaccine, I want it to cement into the public's minds that it's safe. So maybe this first batch is a placebo and everybody that's going to take it isn't going to have any effect of it completely. But they can then claim, because they're in charge of the testing systems and the data, nobody's got COVID. Because the real push is going to come after Christmas, when it's freezing, when the flu season is at its height. That's when they can mask these things, because everybody's getting flu. If that's the case, then it's the next batch that are going to be the real serious game in relation to this minus 70 degrees. They want the estates. They want the estates. Now, at the moment, there's 3 generations between them getting the estates and us keeping the estates in the position that they're in. We haven't claimed them, but they're still held ransom. Their job has been to prevent us from knowing about it. But what we know is with this Jubilee that's coming, it's going to be an offer of all debts cancelled, but you have to hand over your estate. Now, in order to have that achieved, you'd have the Generation X is what you'd aim that at. Because my generation, we have got our hands on a lot of levers of power in the system because of our age. So the baby boomers, they've got them tapped because they're obsessed with NHS. They do whatever they're told by the NHS, and they believe everything that comes on the telly. And a lot of them are in the old folks' homes. So that would be the perfect mechanic to get rid of that generation and to keep their estates in their possession. You've got Israel now doing everything it can to kick off a war with Iran, which will bring in Russia, it will bring in China, it will be a world war. And of course, this is being run by Israel. And they want your children to go and fight this war for Israel. So that's the millennials sorted. That's kill them. That would leave the Generation X. We're too old to go to war, and we're not old enough to be in care homes. All right. Thus, this idea of Jubilee would have to be aiming and hitting the Generation X, us, my generation. Now, what you need to start getting in your mind, Generation X, is this: you are not the debtor. You don't owe anything in this. The fact that you're being seen as the debtor is because you've accepted what is not. You've accepted the fake over the real. So you're not actually the debtor, but they've persuaded that you are. So to offer the carrot of will release you of all your debt would carry. What you need to understand is that you're not the debtor, you're the creditor. and that the system that's trying to nick your estate by offering you a release of debt is actually the debtor. So the importance for Generation X is to start to understand this concept. Yeah? You've got the old school, the baby boomers sorted medically and in the care homes. And they've got the millennials all ripe to be dragged into this war. So that is the data I would have you swim in your minds, people, because I think this is how we need to attack this on a 3-generational front. Yeah, baby boomers, medically anaesthetised. Your millennials, they're trying to set with this war. But the Generation X, they're the ones who are going to blag you with sophistry in having you believe you're a debtor, and they're going to release you from that debt. It's all about killing the creditor by consent, so getting the creditor to suicide, so that's medication, off to war. Yeah? Are you seeing what I'm saying to you there? They've got all their operatives and everything through the secret societies. They've got a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses. They've got tons of evangelicals here, your little satanic backstreet churches, running the food banks. They're running the system for this. So your Jehovah's Witnesses, yeah, all these little Masonic organisations are running this new system that they're trying to set going. And of course, there's not enough of them yet. They need to remove a lot of the normals, so that's the older ones. And of course, these millennials, if they can get them off to this war. Generation X, you need to get a grip. You need to start using your minds and understand that you're not the debtor, you're the creditor. And you need to take back that position. In doing so, would stop them murdering the baby boomers, and we could prevent them taking your children off to war. Okay, by understanding title, your position, and the fact that you're a creditor. So I hope this grammar that I've been presenting this year is starting to make sense as a new foundational map that we need to be taking on as an update. Because then, if we attack it in that direction, we can get somewhere. So there's a lot on the heads of Generation X in what I'm presenting here. You have to start thinking.